Our special report continues today about the settlement involving a lawsuit involving Jeffrey Epstein, the convicted billionaire sex offender. Joining us now live is Alan Dershowitz, Harvard University professor at one point, and now he says, an advisor to Jeffrey Epstein, and a man who himself has been accused by one of the underage girls of impropriety. Mr. Dershowitz, thank you very much for being here and for coming on.
Thank you. Let me set the record straight.
Yes.
I'm not a current advisor to Jeffrey Epstein. Having been his lawyer in the criminal case years ago, I respond when he calls me and asks me questions relating to the criminal case, but I'm giving him no current advice. I'm not on retainer to him. I've received no fees in probably many, many years. So I'm just like any other lawyer who was involved in a criminal case in the past and has to be responsive when asked any questions growing out of that criminal case. As far as the charges against me, they were thoroughly and completely disproved. They were withdrawn by the lawyers. The judge struck it and sanctioned the lawyers for filing it. The former director of the FBI did a complete investigation, went through every one of my Amex cards, travel records, TV appearances, and proved conclusively that I could not have been and was not at any of the locations that this woman claimed to have met me at. I never met her. I don't know her. It's a complete and total fabrication.
You never met her?
Never met her. Never met her. Don't know who she is. Never heard of her. The accusation was part of an extortion plot against Leslie Wexner. Her best friend called me and told me that the goal of going after me was to get a lot of money from Leslie Wexner, who was accused of the same thing. They accused me publicly, and then they accused Wexner privately in an attempt to get some money from him. But and the best friend told me that Virginia Roberts told her she was, quote, she felt pressured to include me, even though she had never previously mentioned me as one of the people with whom she allegedly had relations. So my case is completely closed over. I've been completely cleared. I had nothing to do with it and never met the woman. And this is a woman who should be seriously punished for having submitted false information and a false affidavit.
As you know, in this affidavit that she filed, which has now been sealed in the court record, she claims she had sex with you 6 times in New York, in the Virgin Islands, in New Mexico, and in Palm Beach.
Yeah, well, she just made the whole thing up. And I challenge you to get her on the show and ask her to repeat any of those things without the litigation privilege. I have challenged her from day one to make any statement to the press. She refuses to. She simply hides behind the litigation privilege. It's very easy to file a document in court and not be subject to any accountability for it. But why don't you call her on the phone, call her lawyers, and ask to get her on the air and ask her to repeat the statements. And if she does, I will be in court the next day suing her for defamation, and I will win the case because I can prove conclusively that she made up the whole story from top to bottom.
And how do you prove that, Mr. Dershowitz?
I have all my records. My records show where I was every single day during the years that she claimed to have known Jeffrey Epstein. I can prove where I was every single day, and more importantly, I can prove where I wasn't. I was never on Jeffrey Epstein's island during the period she knew him. I was never at his ranch during the period she knew him. The airplane records show I was never in his airplane during the period she knew him, and I was never in his mansion on Palm Beach during the time he knew him. So it's conclusive evidence. Also, she claimed that she had dinner with Bill Clinton on that island, then met with Al Gore and Tipper Gore on that island, and records of the Secret Service prove that none of the 3 of them ever set foot on that island. Al Gore and Tipper Gore never even met Jeffrey Epstein. They don't know him. She is a certified, complete, total liar who's made up stories about a great many people, prominent people, former prime ministers, former leaders of the United States Congress. Many of her allegations are provably false, and the consequence should be on her. I am a victim of a false accusation. She is the perpetrator of a false accusation. Let's not confuse perpetrators and victims here.
You see yourself as a victim?
A victim of a false accusation, of course.
Oh,
and victims should speak out. That's why I was willing to be on your show. She is not willing to be on your show. She is not willing to say in public what she has said behind the shield of the litigation privilege. And I urge you to call her lawyers, and ask her to repeat what she said in her affidavit on the show, and then you'll have an interesting case to cover in court. But she won't do it. She was interviewed by the Miami Herald. She was asked every question in the book, but she was never asked by the Miami Herald, never provided the Miami Herald on the record a statement validating what she had previously said in the affidavit, because she knew that if she said it to the Miami Herald, she would be sued. So she has covered herself, protected herself from any consequences for her deliberate lying. And so the focus should be on her as the perpetrator of a false accusation, rather than me, who was a victim of a false accusation. Victims should speak out. I am speaking out. I'm trying to change the legal rules that permit somebody to do drive-by shootings like this, essentially scribbling accusations on a bathroom wall and then not being held accountable for anything she did. I want to hold her accountable. I want there to be a trial. I want there to be hearings. I want there to be investigations, because I know the investigations will prove what I've already proved, namely that she made up all the charges out of whole cloth.
Mr. Dershowitz, what's your reaction today to the settlement in the case involving Bradley Edwards and Jeffrey Epstein?
I'm not surprised. These cases tend to settle. I don't know very much about the case. I've not advised Epstein with regard to this case at all. I was his criminal lawyer back some years ago, and that's the nature of my relationship with Jeffrey Epstein.
And what about the lenient deal you were able to work out and others on his legal team with federal prosecutors? Was that appropriate?
I'm very proud of that deal. That's what lawyers are supposed to do. Lawyers are supposed to get the best deal they can. Acosta was very, very tough. The prosecutors were very, very tough. But
how were they very tough, actually?
But they had a very weak case, because you needed to prove to get a federal case. Remember, this was a federal case initially. You have to prove that the alleged women were transported in interstate commerce. And unless you can prove that, you don't have a federal case. All you have is a state case. And so in the end, there was really no federal case. There was a state case, and the state case was brought. And any lawyer... Do
you think was justice served, really, in this case?
That's not... The job of a judge is to serve justice. The job of a criminal lawyer is to zealously defend his client and get the best deal possible. I will continue to do that. I've done that for 55 years. That's my job. My job is always to get the best deal, and acquittal if possible, if not the lowest possible sentence, for all of my clients, using only ethical and legal and proper means. So the process of justice demands, under the Sixth Amendment, that everybody, no matter how despised, be given adequate defense. I grew up during the McCarthy period, where lawyers who represented people accused of communism were despised, and yet those lawyers did the right thing, even if they were anti-communists. They did the right thing in defending their clients and getting them the best possible deal and protecting their constitutional rights. That's what I did for Jeffrey Epstein. That's what I've done for 200 other clients over the course of a 55-year career.
So no regrets, then, in arranging a deal in which he spent only 13 months behind bars?
I wish I could have gotten him a deal where he spent only 10 months. I mean, the job of a criminal defense lawyer is to get the best possible deal. If I had been able to get him a deal where he spent no time in prison, that would have been even better. That's what a criminal defense lawyer does. And if you don't want to have criminal defense lawyers, then look at the Iranian legal system, or the Russian legal system, or the Chinese legal system. We have what's called an adversary system. And if I had failed to get him the best possible deal, I would have engaged in malpractice and violated his constitutional rights under the Sixth Amendment. My job is to get him the best possible deal I could. And I think I accomplished that goal, along with Ken Starr, along with some of the most important lawyers in the country, and some of the most ethical and eminent lawyers in the country, Roy Black, Marty Weinberg, Jay Lefkowitz. There was a team of lawyers, and we worked very hard. The prosecutors worked very hard. The adversarial system worked, and we got a deal that both sides were satisfied with.
And not the victims, however. And why was the deal kept secret from them?
I had no involvement in that. I'm not sure that that's true. The victims found out about the deal. They
not in advance of the deal. Not in advance of the deal. Didn't they have a right to object or to be forward?
That's an issue that's being litigated in the court. They're not my clients. Their lawyers should raise those issues. I was representing my client. And my interest is in getting, again, the best possible deal for my clients. In the end, Epstein settled many, many of the cases with these women. They found out about it. A very good lawyer was appointed for the women. The adversary system worked properly. Many of these women were well compensated. That's the way the system's supposed to work.
Was your advice today to him? Did you give him advice to settle this case?
No, I had no involvement in this case whatsoever. My legal involvement with him ended when his case was settled. But obviously, whenever you have cases, questions come up years later about the case and what it meant, what this deal, what this part of the deal meant. And so a couple of times a year, he'll call me and ask me to explain something from the deal. And it's my obligation as a lawyer to do so. But I'm not currently representing him on any current matters, including this settlement.
Alan Dershowitz, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.